Welcome, everyone, to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thanks so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. I'm your host, Dave Nava. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host, or in this case, co-hosts, to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is how to leverage military recruiters to get hired. So if you've ever wondered what a military recruiter does, how they can help you get access to jobs at their company, and what the military recruiting program at Salesforce looks like, this is the session for you. I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-hosts for tonight's session, Mike Nolan and Dave Anderson. Mike's a senior manager and leads the military recruiting program at Salesforce. He's been in the recruiting space for over 20 years and is a veteran of the Air National Guard. Dave's a program manager at Salesforce in charge of military recruiting and external partnerships. He's also a veteran of the Air National Guard and has deep experience in recruiting and talent management. It is awesome to have you guys here co-hosting with me. Welcome. If you could each take a moment to further introduce yourself and kind of share your Salesforce story, that would be awesome. Do you want to start us off, Mike?
Absolutely. For those who don't know me, my name is Mike Nolan. I'm the senior manager of our military recruiting program. And I'm also starting my 4th year as global president of VetForce, which is our military and ally employee resource group. Almost 7.5 years at Salesforce, so it's been a while. It's been a journey, though. I feel fortunate because I'm one of those people that got to create the perfect job for myself, which is creating this military recruiting program for Salesforce. And an interesting story of how Dave ended up in my team, but I'll kind of let him run with that story. Dave.
Hey, everybody. Stoked to be on. Thanks, David. I was actually on this about a little over 13 months ago. And then now it's been about 10 months since I've been a Salesforce employee. So this definitely works. As long as you follow everything David Nava says, then you'll end up at Salesforce. Anyway, so I actually came right off active duty. I was working as an Air National Guard recruiter, but I was activated for 6 years. I worked in various different roles. Special warfare recruiting was my last kind of stop. And then about 2 years ago, right when the pandemic happened, I think everyone just had like a little bit of, I would say, kind of a new realization of what they want to do with their lives, right? When your life stops. And mine was, I'm not going to spend 20 years on active duty. So I'm going to go back to the reserves. I already had quite a few years on the reserve side. So ended up going back to reserve status, but I had to figure out what I was going to do. I had picked Salesforce as the software company I was going to. I knew there was a couple ways for me to get in on some research that I had done. And then actually a conversation that I had with Mike about a year ago as well is just a quick call to say, hey, I want to come in a sales role or a recruiting role. Like, what do I need to do? And Mike Nolan kind of broke it down for me to a certain extent. And then next thing you know, I was interviewing with the recruiting manager at Salesforce for customer success group. And she offered me the job. And I started walking around my house and I went and talked to my wife and I said, hey, I think I just got a job at salesforce.com and I'm stationed here in Boise, Idaho, about to walk off post. I haven't even resigned my position yet. And so she freaked out, I freaked out. And then I went and told my commanding officer that it was time to find a new recruiter as soon as you guys can. And I'm going back to reserve duty. So anyway, sorry for the long story, but then I moved over to Mike's team about 2 months ago now, which is originally what I did want to do. And that is come to a company and help other veterans and military spouses come into tech, specifically here at Salesforce.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great story, David. And thanks as well, Mike, for sharing your story. Great to hear from both of you. What we'll do here is I do see some new faces in the crowd, which is awesome. Welcome. So for those joining for the first time, I always like to kind of briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before we open the floor for questions and discussion. So if you're wondering, these sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with both military trailblazers and allies. Absolutely everyone's welcome to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics so that we can help you achieve collaboratively your professional development and your career related goals. For the next hour, this is your opportunity for collaborative mentorship. So everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and both ask and answer questions from your perspective, which of course will provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. So you've probably already been watching chat. Please do keep an eye on that throughout the session. I typically will post links to employment opportunities, volunteer opportunities, knowledge articles, so on and so forth throughout. And those are also available on the YouTube, with the YouTube video on YouTube. There's a document that's in the description section that you can access for all the links if you happen to miss them. If you want to ask a question at any point during today's session, which I hope that you do because this is your session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel comfortable speaking up, no worries. Post your question in chat, and I'll take it in the order that it comes. And then finally, new announcement. If you want to ask a question or make a comment off the record, please let me know beforehand, and I will edit it out afterwards. And that way, it's an attribution-free zone, and you can say or ask whatever you want. You just have to let me know before we go to production for the video. At that point, it's too late. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll lob the first question over the wall, and then we'll keep going. You guys can pick it up from there. And so, my first question was actually, can you explain your roles in the military recruiting program and what responsibilities they entail? And I know you talked a little bit about it, but if you could go a bit deeper, and I guess I'm curious to know, after you kind of talk about your role, how does that differ from a traditional recruiter? And anyone can start.
So I'll jump in. So the military recruiting program, April 15th, turned 1 year old, and it was a program of one. It was just me for the first year. So thanks, Dave. So it was really the biggest thing that we had to do was we had to build the brand in the external community, because a lot of people knew of the Salesforce Military Training Program. A lot of you have earned careers via that external training program, the technical training program, but there wasn't a reputation or any brand at all for a program now that exists that could simplify the path for anybody who served or our spouses to earn opportunities at Salesforce. So this is something that I started doing last year, starting getting some partnerships in place with the Military Spouse Employment Partnership, really started to get our visibility through the Military Times designation, as well as the Best for Vets designation, Military Times, military friendly. That was the second year we earned it. And then the Best for Vets was the first year in the company's history. As I've been fortunate enough to get a head count, and I now have Dave on my team, building the brand is obviously still key, top of mind for us. And then the other piece of what I'm working on right now, which is probably going to, be a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight, is that when we drive people to the Military Careers homepage, I want some really good content on there to enable every single person who goes and spends some time, watches the video, reads the articles, reads a link, that you can enable yourself to be successful. And that's what I really want as a differentiator, which I really haven't seen a lot out there in most of the military careers pages that I've taken a look at. So that is the one piece that I'm doing, I should say, as well as building the brand internally, making hiring managers, leaders, business units, heads, the executives even, making them aware that, hey, we have this program in place now. And what's the appetite for hiring from the military community? Anybody who served, spouses, and there's a huge appetite there. Even last week, the military summit that I definitely see a few faces who attended, there were 3 executives that I didn't know had very close ties to the military community. And that was Brett Taylor, our co-CEO, who still found time, even with that little thing called Twitter going on, to come and spend time with the military community. We had Sarah Franklin and we had Brian Millam. Did not know that all 3 of those had very close ties to the military community. So building this, and then one program that Dave, Dave and I are going to do collectively, is that for the first time in Salesforce's history, we're going to launch an internal SkillBridge fellowship program aligned with November, which is within Salesforce. It's our equality month. So that's the month that we celebrate the military and allied community. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of appetite. And for, the hiring leaders that have never heard of this word SkillBridge before, once they realize what it is, they're all, there's a big smile on their face. So I see some good things happening with this program. Dave, why don't you kind of fill in and tell them what you're up to?
Yeah, so on my end is when I came in, Mike and I basically looked at a bunch of different pillars of like, how can we make this military recruiting program really reach a lot of people? And as Mike hit on a few different things, and we're really starting with branding. And right now we want to brand ourselves as an ally to the veteran community, as well as military spouses. And we want to show that Salesforce is hiring veterans directly. And we need to partner with different organizations to make that known. Because prior to even when I was looking at Salesforce, I had heard the name, but I didn't know a lot about Salesforce when I was looking to get into tech. And I know a lot of veterans that I speak to, they don't either. And so we're trying to figure out a way to connect with those veterans and to brand Salesforce as a veteran hiring company. Fortunately, we have a lot of veterans at the company, about 3,700 now, and that's globally. And they're helping us brand as well. But really, my major piece from a day-to-day perspective is to manage the external partnerships and grow that brand. So those external partnerships that we're working with right now are massive size. I saw someone in the chat that said HOH. That actually is one of our external partners, and we do partner with them to assist veterans in getting Salesforce certifications as well as different fellowships. We'll go a little more into that later. But some other partnerships that we're trying to leverage is like working with the VA and connect, because the VA uses our software. And so as a customer, we can reach a lot of veterans through that. And we want to make sure that we're doing that. So that's a really big portion of my day-to-day. And then another thing that we do is we like to coach and mentor veterans, Mike and I, and we do some calls when we're able to basically get some of these veterans that are ready to get hired into different positions and kind of help them build that pathway to get into tech. And I know Mike will actually speak to it a little bit more eloquently than myself, exactly how to do that. And it was the way that I got to Salesforce. I mean, I met with Mike, then I met with a hiring manager, and then a senior director, and then I got an offer. So it was just kind of one of those things. But really, a lot of it had to do with talking with other veterans and spouses that were at salesforce.com, coaching me on how the culture is, what I need to say, different ways. Not what I need to say is the wrong way to say that, but different ways to translate my military experience to salesforce.com and the culture. And I was able to do that. And that's something that is very difficult. And we're working as a recruiting team to assist those veterans that want to come to Salesforce to do that. We will align certain veterans that are, I would say, ready to get hired at Salesforce. We'll align them with other recruiters so they can kind of begin those interview processes.
Awesome. That makes it really clear. I appreciate it. We've got a couple questions in there. We'll get to those in 1 second. I know, Elio, you had your hand raised. Did you have a comment or a question?
I actually had a quick comment, and just to thank everybody for what we do. I learned from a fellow vet, somebody who was going to be a vet, who actually found a role in the military and is going back, extending their stay because they found a Salesforce role. I have never heard of such thing. And this person, I'll let them tell their story whenever they decide to, but I wanted to share that because they came to this group and listened to a lot of us share stories of success in the field. This person actually, they learned about this role the day after they had said that they were going to leave the military, and now have extended their stay in the military, and their role is going to be as part of a Salesforce team inside the military, which to me is awesome. And that's just a little success story from this group that I wanted to share with everybody, and exactly to what Mike is bringing to the table here to share about some of the skills that we'll learn. So anyways, that's my story I wanted to share with the group.
Yeah, thanks very much, Elliot. I appreciate that. We had a couple SkillBridge questions. And so I think, Larry, I answered yours in the chat. Can you complete a SkillBridge opportunity if you've already done one? It's based upon your command, and I'm pretty sure they only let you do one. It's only for active duty folks. However, the Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship is for any military trailblazer, which includes spouses, either in the military through the SkillBridge program, or if you've left, it also applies to veterans. And if you have questions, not only are there numerous cohort members on the call, but Iris is here as well. And then the other question was, Nick had asked, what are the differences and similarities between the military recruiting program at Salesforce and Hiring Our Heroes? And so Dave or Mike, and Iris also can obviously provide clarity. Feel free to tackle that question.
Yeah, so the military recruiting program, we are exclusive to Salesforce. The only thing that we focus on is, and right now it's an AMER-based program. So anything in the US from open jobs, and really we're not focused in at the individual job level now. We're actually targeting the business unit leaders to say, all right, in customer success, let's start from the top and kind of work our way down. But, with that support and us knowing that that's a good entry point, and also because it's only Dave and I, this is the approach that we're taking right now. And then HOH, we've through the Salesforce Military Training Program, it's really, we've done the HOH contribution still to, achieve the program's objective, which is provide the technical talent to our customers and partners. So it's an external facing versus internal facing.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Did anyone else want to piggyback on that, or?
I would like to just add though that we are for, like as you said, David, that we are for transitioning service members, veterans, and spouses. So come along. Let's see how we can help you. And maybe sometimes you're not ready for the huge Salesforce companies. Sometimes better to start off smaller, one of the smaller companies, get that little bit of experience, and then try and gain Salesforce.
Yeah, great point. If you're not familiar with what the Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship is, I'll do my best to post that link in chat here in a moment, and you can take a look at it. We had a question from Willie that's directed to Dave Anderson, and he asked, during the hiring process, what do you feel set you apart from other candidates? Great question, Willie.
That is a great question. I'd have to ask my manager. No, I'm just kidding. I think some of the things that I had that I thought were a little bit different is I was extremely focused, and actually it was kind of interesting. I did a lot of research on the role that I was going to be interviewing for, and I had done a ton of research, reached out to other people, and kind of figured out that my job as an Air Force recruiter, and this is in my mind, so take this with a grain of salt here, was a lot harder than my job was going to be as a senior recruiter for a company of 75,000. That may sound crazy to you, but for me to advertise, source, qualify, and then actually, convince the individual to join the United States Air Force and then go into a special warfare community and then report those results to a commander was much more difficult than going to a company where I had 387 applications per requisition that I posted, and then just picking the one that I thought was great and then having them get hired. So I think for me, why I say all that though, is when I was ready to interview, I knew exactly what I was going to say when she asked me, how does your past experience relate to what you think you're going to be doing here at Salesforce? And I was able to basically break that down, that what a full life cycle recruiter was in the corporate sector and what it was in the military. And then I used, corporate verbiage to do that. And I think for me, that really set myself apart. And also, something that I think the military does in certain areas, but I would say not in very many, is the military, they teach you how to brag, but not in the corporate way. They teach you how to, bullet point your EPR or your OPR, right? And then, but in a corporate way, there's a really, I would say there's a nicer, more, soft way to present yourself as really confident, but also brag about yourself and tell them, hey, like, this is everything that I've done, and this means a lot. Because I think something that I had heard from many, many people when I told people in the military, hey, I'm going to Salesforce, is people looked at me like I was crazy, and because I was just an E6 recruiter out of Idaho. They're like, there's no way you're going to work at that company that's a tech company in San Francisco. And I would confidently tell them, I would say, I can promise you that I will be at that company or another one. And I think just having that confidence in yourself and then presenting it in a non-military way is really important and will set yourself apart. Because if I came into that interview and basically be like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle this amount of requisitions and these candidates and all that, I could have easily came off that way. But, I didn't. And I think part of it is I had researched enough to know that it was going to be a challenge, but I had also had a lot of tough challenges in my career already, and I was ready for it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I want to foot stomp what you said about translating your military skills, because very often, that's the mistake that a lot of folks make, is that when they have a LinkedIn profile, when they have a resume, when they go in for interviews, they're talking in the context of their previous work experience, but without having translated their military titles, their skill sets to the job at hand. So not only do you have to convert all that speak into civilian speak, because it honestly doesn't make sense to civilian recruiters that don't have a military background at all, but you also have to relate it to the job at hand, like David was mentioning, and communicate your value to that organization in a way that makes sense to them. So great points there. I know Michael has his hand raised, and then John will get to you afterwards.
Hey all, I just saw some comments about when the window opens for SkillBridge and whatnot. I highly recommend normalizing the conversation with your command prior, as far out as you can. That paid great dividends for me. And no one was surprised when I started sending SkillBridge paperwork around. The last thing you want to do is surprise a commander with some sort of paperwork. They do not like that. And then also, you've spent, if you're still in, you've spent a ton of time giving to the service. When you're at that 12-month, 16-month window, start investing in yourself and preparing yourself to go out. Because I see so many folks over my career that they wait until they're a month or two out, and then it's just a S show. And please take care of yourselves. And if anybody needs to talk, because my last day in uniform was on Friday, I'm already working on the beard, and yeah, just let me know. I'm more than happy to help out.
Yeah, great points, Michael. The military will definitely work you until your last day if you let them. It's up to you to carve out that time in your schedule to do the things that you need to do to be successful, because they're not going to hand it to you. I'd add on that great point about introducing the idea of DoD SkillBridge program early, which is, if you're not aware of DoD SkillBridge, 3 to 6 month internship while you're still on the military payroll with a company. It's a professional internship, so it's great for getting work experience. Before Hiring Our Heroes came along, I actually created my own opportunity. And the way that I got it approved at my command was I found a mentor outside of my immediate chain of command, because I was afraid my boss might say no. So I found a mentor within the command staff. It was actually the XO. And over the course of a year or so, she was my mentor, and I brought it up to her, and she kind of smoothed it over. And so she actually had the conversation with my boss, not me. So having that executive sponsor vouch for me made the difference, and was the reason why I was able to participate in the program. Because if you're not aware, they don't backfill your position. So your position is gapped for that 3 to 6 months, and a lot of commands don't want to deal with that. You have to do your due diligence and pave the way for yourself, to Michael's point. So great. John, question or comment from you, sir?
Initially a question, but I do want to actually add on to what was just mentioned. So as a former commander, I'll tell you right now that the people who bring it up ahead of time, it's completely different, because we actually want to see them succeed. We want to see them produce results, and we actually do have ways of you can't technically backfill positions like you said, but we do have some loopholes where you can double slot positions. So when you have some of these E5, E6 slots, they're typically easier to do so. And so when someone comes in and mentions it, you can actually start preparing for double slotting a position. So we're basically not just out of the additional workforce. You can plan ahead to staff it in a way to then allow this person to leave for 6 months and it not hurt, and you can actually help them do it. So that wasn't my question or comment, but I did just want to acknowledge that, because I do think it's extremely important.
Good point.
So what my actual question had to do was with certifications. I would like to know what kind of weight some of these different certifications have. So, personally, I went and did some through ACI Learning, which actually, Michael, I heard about you through Joyce Prunty from ACI Learning, and I completed some of the basic certificates like ITIL, A+, Net+, Security Plus, all those different certs. I'm now working towards the Trailhead certifications for the administrator cert. So I'm just curious, what kind of weight do these certificates have in terms of like the recruiter's eyes? If you see that I have these, even if the administrator certificate isn't related exactly to what I'm going for, which is program management, if that was the case, what kind of value do you see there?
So I'll jump in, John. The suggestion that I make to people, and Dave subtly had it in his story, but the best way you can prepare yourself to be aligned to whatever job you're interested in is talk to your brothers and sisters who are doing that job and ask them, because as a recruiter, I can recruit for any job on the planet, but I'm always going to be an armchair quarterback. I'm on the sidelines. I'm not in the game. So I can know what to do is to keep you through the process. But the real people who are going to help you are, if you can source out a veteran who's doing a program manager job and say, hey, tell me everything about what you do. And that's where you're really going to figure out. And this is where you could say, like, all right, so is this admin cert? Is this going to mean anything for me? And quite honestly, depending upon the job, It may be part of onboarding. It may, I don't want to say it has no relevance, but like if you're in sales, it may just be a plus because you could go deeper technically than most salespeople. But then if you wanted to, explore a career path like David's, like hulk up, like just keep going, just, keep earning those certifications. So it does really depend, on where your career is heading.
Anybody want to weigh in on that as well? I know there's a lot of folks in the room that have certifications. We're all from different backgrounds. I certainly have my opinions, but I want to kind of pulse the room to see if anyone has differing thoughts on the value of certifications, both Salesforce and non-Salesforce related when you're applying for roles.
David, I'll add. So my name is Tim Collins. I'm a senior solution engineer here at Salesforce. I came into Salesforce with 0 Salesforce certifications. I didn't have really any relevant certifications to IT or tech. My background was in signals intelligence and electronic warfare. So, I do have a background from that aspect. But I will, from my perspective, coming in with, basically a clean slate on resume, I'll kind of highlight what David and Mike and Dave touched on earlier, that really find people that are in the role that you want, connect with them on LinkedIn and build that relationship, because that is exactly what got me through the process. Mike connected me with a couple individuals that were in the given role that I was shooting for, and it was those individuals that gave me the heads up on, hey, I understand where you're coming from because I have a veteran background, but I've been working in Salesforce. This is how you need to word it, or X, Y, and Z is irrelevant, but this is very relevant, highlight this. So no matter what your background is, like all the certifications you have are super awesome, and definitely keep pursuing those, and definitely pursue the Salesforce certifications, because that is very, very important. But you have a lot of existing skill sets. However, if you don't start building those relationships across LinkedIn and doing what you're doing right now and finding these avenues to gain more knowledge and how to apply to Salesforce, it'll be more difficult to actually get into the ecosystem. So leverage your contacts, build network, from my opinion. Thanks, David.
Yeah, that's a great point. Mary also adds that, certifications to an extent prove that you're great at taking tests. So there are, to Tim's point, a lot of other elements that go into the decision. I've seen folks that have one certification and are brand new to the industry and have crushed the job interview simply because they came in and they were positive. They had a lot of confidence. They had spent the time and the energy to research the role, but also to research, the technical interview piece, and did phenomenal. Chloe, I don't want to embarrass her, but she's an example of that, who came in with one certification, blew everyone away, and now works at Salesforce. So absolutely get your certifications, but just understand that brand is hugely important, and how you show up is hugely important as well. We've got a bunch of raised hands. So I think,
hey,
Harry,
Dave,
you had your hand. Yeah.
Dave, I wanted to chime in on certs too, because I've had
Sure.
a pretty strong opinion on it, and you and I have talked about this before.
Yep.
There's 2 things that are hard in Salesforce, right? And one is passing that first admin cert. That thing's a beast. Anyone who's taken them knows pretty much all the certs are a beast. But there's a second thing that's hard, and that's actually breaking into the ecosystem itself. And there's really 2 ways to do that. And certs kind of help you stand out among your peers, especially with consultants, where certs are worth points in the partner program. So if you're going to get a consultant job, having those certs, and certain certs like consultant certs are worth more points. And so that's how you kind of stand out. So if you don't have experience, the way to get into the ecosystem is to really smash through certs and get a bunch of them. There is a vast difference between certs and experience, and I think someone just pointed that out. But until you have a way to get into the ecosystem and get a job, there is no way to get that experience. Certs are the way, and a viable path to do that. And it also shows to an employer that you have the gumption to crush through those things, because they are not easy to do, and they take some pain. So, it's a great way to make yourself stand out. And, just one person's opinion on certs. I've got a couple of them now, and, Dave has a ton of them. There's a bunch of people on here who do, but I think that's a common thought on it with certs versus experience. until you get the experience, you need to get the certs to get in the door.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with anything you said, David. In fact, I'll foot stomp it. You know, right or wrong, the more certs you have, you're going to get more looks from recruiters. And we could talk about, you know, is that the best thing? Is it not the best thing? It's just a fact. And that was one of the ways that I differentiated myself early, was to get as many certs as I can. You know, from David's point, if you're interested in consulting, obviously admin is the gateway cert, and then you go for the sales cloud, the service cloud, right, the experience cloud, those core consultant certs. We've got a ton of hands raised, but I see David's raised, so he gets to jump in line because he's the co-host. So David, comment?
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. One thing that John, you said that you're looking to be a project manager or a program manager. And what I would say is, depending on what you want to do, if you know you want to be at Salesforce certs are amazing, and you should continue to get them. They're free for all veterans. I want to make sure everyone on this call knows that if you're a veteran or a military spouse, you can go on salesforcemilitary.com, sign up for any of our certifications, and begin your journey as a Trailblazer, and you should do that. With that said, as a senior recruiter, when I was working for the 7 months prior to the last 3 months, there was actually something on LinkedIn that I would use to search people. And one of them was if you had a Salesforce certification. So that was very important, because if you showed up on my LinkedIn, you had a Salesforce cert, and let's just say you had 20 years military experience in a Salesforce cert. Obviously, I have a little bit of you know, I would look at you a little bit closer than maybe other recruiters would, but I would know that your experience plus your cert, like, you're going to be a very, you know, a high candidate for certain positions. For instance, like customer success, and that was one where you really do need that Salesforce cert to really come out the gate and have a recruiter want to call you. I mean, it's not required, but you know, it's definitely something to look at. Now, really fast, last thing I'll say about all this: if you are not interested in a technical position and you were looking at, let's say, sales or sales, you know, ES or HR is what I mean, or recruiting, you don't need a certification, but I would definitely say getting familiar with one and starting it is great. But it's more about branding yourself and connecting with those other veterans and people at Salesforce and getting the information to do that job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great points. Willie, do you want to take it over? And then Carrie will get back to you in just one moment.
Sure. Thank you, David. So this question is for both Mike and David. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Really appreciate your time. So I know, you know, when we're looking to network, everyone's time is precious. So my question to you is, at this point, whether we're coming out of the military or whether we've been far removed from the military and just now entering or attempting to enter the ecosystem, how do you recommend we approach you as recruiters? Instead of, you know, right after this, immediately bombarding your LinkedIn profile, you know, with network connections, doing it right, of course. But, you know, how should we approach you? What do we need to do to have ourselves, how put together do we need to be in order to approach you?
Well, it's going to happen anyways, Willie. Let's just call it what it is. Mm-hmm. But I would expect nothing less, and I welcome it. So, you know, just don't be shy. Just reach out, David, or, you know, one of us will carve out some time. I'm booking about 3 weeks out right now, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, no time like the present.
Thank you.
Michael, I think you had your hand raised next.
I talked with my fellowship, the manager there, and he said that I really need to know SOQL, and I'm just trying to find the best way to learn it and learn it well quickly, because he needs to use that with Conga. So if you had any advice.
Yeah, so I'm looking up on Trailhead right now, and it's SOQL, correct? Salesforce Object Query Language?
Right, yes.
Because there's SAQL and there's a bunch of other ones too, depending on if you're a CRM Analytics fan. So there is a, I'll just Google, I'll put SOQL into Trailhead. There's a SOQL for admins, which here it is, I found was really foundational. So what I'll do here is I'm going to post that in the chat. That's really great if you don't have any experience with SOQL and you're just trying to figure it out. And then let me see if there's one more. But if if you do a couple SOQL queries in Trailhead, you'll find some. That's like the beginner level one. That's phenomenal. I'd also recommend David Liu, Liu. David Liu has some free material on his website, SFDC 99, which you can Google, and that's who taught me how to code. And I was able to get the Platform Developer 1 cert, which includes SOQL. And then I would also say in your dev console, practice writing SOQL. Yeah, so go to your Salesforce instance, go to the dev console, practice writing queries, practice, writing scripts that will create, delete, update objects in your org, and that's a great way to learn as well. Does that help?
Yeah, it's definitely terrifying because I'm new, but I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Yeah, it took me, and thanks Jade for posting his link in the chat. It took me 6 months to study for that exam. It's nerve-wracking, but to be honest, even though I'm not in a coding role, I use SOQL all the time now. It's like a superpower. Once you learn how to use it, it becomes pretty easy, and you use it all the time. Workbench is also another great way to learn and use SOQL in the Salesforce platform. So we will keep going here. Lina, you had your hand up. I know you lowered it, but wanted to see if you still had a question or comment.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. So just to piggyback from what I'm saying and David was saying, yes, please remember to reach out to any of us here in Salesforce. We're happy to help you, especially in different roles that you want to entertain. Like myself, I'm a delivery manager, Tim's a solution architect, David's solution architect, like in sales. You have so many people from Salesforce in this group that you could reach out, and also we could help you with revising your resume and going through the interview process, asking you questions, what they are, and practice with you. We're here to help you. As far as the certification, I also will back up with David. It is important for you to continue on learning, as myself and others here. We're constantly learning. We're constantly getting other certs that is required, not required, but we want to continue learning, making us more marketable, whether we stay in Salesforce or move into other territory. So please reach out. We're here to support you all, and we understand where you are starting, leaving the military world, coming to civilian. It's pretty scary, but we're here to help you. We've been through that transition ourselves. Thank you, David.
Great point, Lina, and thanks for bringing that up. And I'll just piggyback on that to say, employee referrals are the way to go if you want to get hired in the ecosystem. And you can consider everyone here that's on the call as your ally. So if there's a role that comes up at Salesforce that you're qualified for, that you're interested in, and you want to apply for it, get that employee referral. Reach out to myself, Elio, Geraldine, Michael, David, any one of the Salesforce employees. I'm sure that any of them and me as well are happy to put you in for that role. What we would need from you, obviously, is one, make sure you are qualified, because our reputation is at stake when we do put you up for an employee referral. Two, make sure your resume is up to date and transferable skills are listed in non-military speak. And then include the link to that Workday job description so that we can reference that. And what we will do is we'll go ahead and put you in for the referral. We have to do that before you apply. So if you apply first, you you miss the opportunity. So don't apply. Let us do it for you. It sends you a link. And then what I like to do is I reach out to that hiring manager or recruiter directly, and I say, hey, Lina is applying for this role. She's phenomenal. If you have any questions about Lina, let me know. And then I list a couple things that I really like about her, and that's worked. In fact, I was able to help someone get hired recently.
Yeah.
So.
And you never know who the hiring manager is, because as myself, I'm a hiring manager, but I might know that person. So feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah, great point. Thank you, Lina. I think, Carrie, you have your mic issue fixed, so you've got the floor.
Thank you. I am parked, I promise. So I put in a Salesforce application earlier this year, and it's my question to you is that particular one, I know I had some mistakes on there after I turned it in. I was like, okay, I should have caught that earlier. I saw on the Salesforce site, it says they recommend to not apply for any more than 3 positions. When you put in, maybe a second application, do they pull up that same resume, or do you put in a new resume for, other types of positions? How does that work out?
You can
You could
use
always
a prior application, but you don't have to. So you can, you can go fresh, and this is where you could actually add it. If you want to put a different employee as a referral source, just take it with a grain of salt in the three applications. It's not, it's really more of just an encouragement, because you wouldn't believe some of the people and the amount of applications they submit. It's like it was ridiculous. So we're just trying to get people to be more targeted. What I tell people is, like, have 3 open applications, and if you didn't even get considered, it just you got the thank you but no thank you. That's not an application. So that would be my suggestions, because you can only interview for one job at a time.
Okay, and then I guess this is kind of a follow-up. If it is a no, do they tell you? That's one. And then generally from start to finish, how long does the hiring process go at Salesforce?
They should tell you, yes, but nothing's a perfect science. I will say that. And then you said about the interview process. It honestly depends on the role, but like internally, we don't have multiple steps where it's like you're going to meet with 15 people. We try and shorten the process to, Dave, what usually like 3 steps, maybe 4. Like usually it's a interview with the hiring manager, a phone screen, 1-hour panel interview, and then some sort of presentation. Okay,
awesome. Thank you so much, and thanks for your patience too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. And I'll just piggyback to say, there is a service level agreement for responding to applications. I don't know if I'm allowed to share it, so I won't. I'll leave that to Dave and Michael. But they are supposed to respond to you within a certain amount of time. So let me just throw out a random number. If it's been 3 weeks and you haven't heard anything, that's when it really makes sense to have an employee referral, because you can go, hey, Dave, it's been 3 weeks. I haven't heard anything. And honestly, like if you're my referral, I will have already contacted the hiring manager to say, hey, it's been 3 weeks. She hasn't heard anything. What's going on? And you can keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening. So let me go to Mike, because again, co-host gets head of the line privileges, and then John will come to you after that.
So one thing that I want to just, because there's been a bunch of different pieces that I kind of put together, and I find this analogy works really well with our community. But the thing that I tell people, if you're interested in Salesforce, and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, heck, the first thing I talk about, and you can see how many times I comment weekly on David's office hours, like use this as a resource, use these videos, watch them to figure out, hey, is it program project management? And John, specifically for you, I would absolutely take a look at the Success Manager office hours session. But once you figure it out and you say, this is the job that I want to pursue, think of it in a mission mindset. You've been given orders. You all need to earn your particular position within Salesforce. So anytime you've been given orders in the military, what did you do? You planned for the operation. Planning for the operation would mean, okay, let me see, who are the resources that I have? Who am I going to take on this mission? And it's going to be the most qualified people. Well, the most qualified people, this is where you start to have conversations with program managers. And as far as reaching out, I think it was a question, just send a LinkedIn invitation, add a quick note. Hey, I'm a fellow veteran looking to get into this role. Can I get a few minutes of your time? And just as Lina, Elio, Dave, David, like all of us, we're all on this call because we'll carve out time. We'll stop what we're doing to have those conversations. So in the pre-planning phase of this mission, the reason you're having these conversations is preparing you to answer that one open-ended question. What does this job do when you get face-to-face with that recruiter? Now, you could probably do all the research and read the job description, have a pretty good go at answering that. But think if you talk to 10 veterans who are doing that job that you're aligned to, how much more confident you would be delivering that answer. And then the most important thing, that word that we've heard over and over again, being able to translate your experience. I tell people all the time, I don't care if it's a mission in the battlefield. If you translate it properly to a civilian, you could make it seem like a Macy's issue, or Banana Republic or a retail customer. So getting to that point, and then once you feel confident you can answer that question, now is when you submit those applications. Reach out to like Dave, and just as he said, let him send you the link, and then you reply for it, and then Dave does it automatically. But don't be afraid to ask that individual, hey, listen, and use me or Dave. Mike Nolan wanted me to ask this question. Would you mind sending a Slack message? You'll see at least the recruiter, because they'll get a notification, but sometimes they'll see the hiring manager too. So, you know, reach out, just something simple. Hey, I want to let you know I submitted my friend, he or she's a veteran, great addition to the company. Something simple like that can actually, you know, push the recruiter or nudge the recruiter to say, hey, let me reach out and I'll have a conversation. Now, when you're also in that planning stage, don't be afraid to ask these people that you're having a conversation with, hey, when I start in the interview process, could I reach out to get guidance and help from you through the process? Why not bring somebody on the mission who already knows what's around the corner when you don't, and they've successfully completed this mission? These are the things that are going to do where you're going to have a team of people, your brothers and sisters who are going to want to help you out, and they're helping you on a journey they've already completed. So if you put in that mindset, for a lot of people, they're like, all right, that's how I'm wired, I can do this. So I just wanted to kind of pull that all together for everybody, because a lot of people have said it is helpful.
Yeah, definitely helpful. I think that the tagline is you have to own the process. All right, so stay engaged, own the process. And if you don't make it, like I applied to Salesforce, gosh, probably 3 or 4 times, didn't make it, gave up, sort of, and you know, worked for a partner for a year, but then came back to it and ultimately got hired. So don't give up, keep going. I can't tell you how many folks that I've seen that have applied for positions, second time make it, third time make it, because they stuck it out. And each time, right, they're not like going, you know, they're not going home and then coming back with the same set of skills. They came back with improved skills, right? They learned from their mistakes. They developed, you know, they earned additional certs. They corrected whatever the deficiency was, and they came back stronger, and that was noticed. Plus, they built that relationship with that hiring team, and so they were a known quantity the second, third time, and they got brought on. If you don't get hired, it may not necessarily be because, you know, you're not an outstanding candidate. It may just because there's also an internal hire who's been doing it for 7 years and has more experience, more certifications, and it's hard to compete against that. Whereas if you come back again for the next application, you know, then, you know, it's maybe a more level playing field. You never know those dynamics, so don't give up, keep going. John, you've got your hand raised. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to share a recent experience with Carrie about some of my experiences with the recent applying and with response. I have got a response every single time so far. What I've noticed, though, what can dictate some of the time differences is if the job remained open, if the posting remained open, it sometimes took a little bit longer to hear back from them. So, for example, I have one that I've been, you know, in consideration for 3 weeks, but the job posting's still open. I had a similar situation where once that closed, I heard back from them 2 days after I noticed it closed. Now, maybe that's a coincidence or not. Michael, I know you could speak on that, but that's just my personal firsthand. And in terms of the actual, you know, interview process, yeah, my process was 3 steps. I went through, I got to the end, and I was notified within a few days of the final presentation and panel interview that, you know, they decided to go with someone else. It was somewhat discouraging, but it was also nice to know that we had communication the whole time. So I have not been left, you know, out to dry yet so far. So for what that's worth.
Thank you. That helps. I haven't gotten a no, so that's good.
Yeah, and I have been told no. So no, in my opinion, so far, when I haven't got a no, that's been a good thing, because it's, you know, it's still a possibility. So yeah, have not had a situation where I have not been given a definitive answer.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, John. Appreciate it. Elio, you had your hand raised. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I was just just a quick comment. Look, for the team to know, for us that have been here a while, I remember the company was 11,000 employees when we came on board. We're over 75,000. So there will be some challenges sometimes in some of these processes. This is why I think it's great that we're having this discussion and you connect with us. I know John and I have been talking offline and, you know, getting him submitted and getting him some answers. That's great. So those types of processes will help minimize any of that delay. And I hope you guys understand that at the end of the day, these are also humans. A lot of these recruiters that we have, some of them are either full-time, some of them are contract workers, because there's so many roles that our company has. So I say be kind, be patient. I'm also interviewing for roles internally as part of my career, and I can tell you I go through the same steps, right? You submit your application, you talk to a leader. If it's a good fit, you got to go through the formal interview process. So it's no different for us. And I can tell you, having gone through a couple of those processes earlier this year, it's the same steps that everybody's going through. So I just wanted to share that from my perspective, somebody who's working at Salesforce.
Yeah, thank you, Elio. Patience is definitely key. And there is a massive hiring process going on right now, so it is taking a bit longer. Ryan, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me a minute here. I'm trying to transition into Salesforce. So right now, what I'm really trying to focus on is building that network. I'm just finding that it's a super small world, really, inside the ecosystem.
Yeah, you're doing all the right things, leveraging those relationships and integrating yourself within the community, because more so than any other profession that I've had, the community matters in this ecosystem, and it is what will help you throughout your career. So you're doing the right things. David, you have your hand raised. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, really quickly, one thing that I want to do too is I know there's a lot of different veteran like outreach and veteran translator programs and all these things out there. The best one that I can tell you that I've gone through and spoke with by far is one called shift.org, and I'll throw it in the chat before the end. But they're all veterans, all of them that work there, but they all got into tech and they all work in tech. And the individual that actually started the company started another tech company a few years ago, right off of active duty. The best advice that they gave me, and advice that I would give everyone, is a lot of times you'll see in these transferable skills, you'll see a lot of veterans tell you to dumb down your career, or basically, you know what the right word is other than dumb down, right phrase other than dumb down. I actually disagree with that. And I did not do that. And I had interviews for an account executive position and a senior recruiter position at Salesforce while I was on active duty with virtually no corporate experience. And so how I did that is I transferred my skills extremely well. Because think about it, like let's just say you're in charge of lodging as a drill sergeant, as a sergeant for some sort of a deployment, right? And the lodging you get is absolutely horrible. And now you have to convince, you know, some CO that all your guys need better lodging. That's a salesman right there. And you can absolutely translate that to the civilian sector, and using big dollars that you have dealt with in the military will really, really translate well too. Because someone's like, you can't handle $1 million deal. You're like, oh, like I handled, like for instance, you're David Nava. I handled a $1.1 billion fighter jet. And so, yes, I can handle, you know, certain deals. And anyway, what I'm saying is once you learn how to translate that, do so, and don't worry about, you know, don't think of yourself as like lower than someone else in the corporate sector because you have military experience. It's just different.
Yeah, great points. And it's a difficult thing to learn how to do, to translate those skills. I actually reached out to a professional resume writer on Veterati, Veterati, V-E-T-E-R-A-T-I, which if you're not familiar, is a whole ecosystem of folks that are waiting to mentor you for free. One-to-one focused conversations. You just sign up as a mentee, vet, transitioning service member, spouse, and you can access people in Salesforce, but people across the spectrum of industries. So anyway, I found a resume writer on there, and she spent a month with me, helping me to put all of my jargon into Salesforce speak, and that was invaluable. That helped me so much throughout the process. So, you know, if you can't find someone for free, and there's lots of free services that do it, Military Officers Association, you know, Hiring Our Heroes has tools for that, Merivis as well. If you can't find the free ones, it is worth investing the $300 to $400 for a reputable resume writer to put your skills into the appropriate language. It will benefit you throughout your career. And think about it, like if you're applying for a to 125K job, is $300 really that much money? Probably not. So we've got just about 2 minutes left. I'm going to plug one program real quick that's also free. And while I'm doing that, if you have a last minute question, go ahead and think it up, because you got just a couple minutes to pose it. Oh, you know what? There is a question in chat, so I'll get to that in 1 second, Jarvis. So if you look in chat now, ForBlock is a free program. They have a career readiness program, which is available to, again, the military community, and they will teach you how to brand yourself, how to have conversations with companies, how to communicate your value in a context that makes sense, how to transfer your skills, the whole 9 yards. Look them up. I went through that program. It is definitely value added. And Jarvis asked, can anyone speak to an opportunity to do a skill bridge in a specific area like DevOps engineering? And so what I will say, I'll go ahead and answer real quick, and then I'll turn it over to the group. The SkillBridge program is pretty flexible. Obviously, there's established programs. David brought up Shift. There's also Breakline. There's also Hiring Our Heroes. Salesforce, has a pilot in place right now, and Mike's going to be launching more SkillBridge opportunities. But independent of that, you can launch your own SkillBridge opportunity with any company that is willing to abide by the SkillBridge guidelines. All you have to do is basically just get that letter from your command saying you're eligible to apply. Figure out your leave or permissive TDY, and then get a letter from the company stating that they will comply with the DoD SkillBridge program guidelines. Cite all the reference instructions. Get your JAG or your Judge Advocate General, your legal person, to look at it. That's what I did. And I picked the company that I wanted to work for. So if there's a DevOps opportunity, Jarvis, say with like Capato, right, and you really want to jump on that, reach out to Capato and say, hey, listen, would you like to have me on your staff for 3 to 6 months for free with no obligation to hire, just to teach me? I did that and Pole Source, my first company, jumped at the chance, and they ended up hiring me, and the rest is, has been pretty decent for me. So that's a consideration.
If I may, the Air Force has changed and it's updated now. So for you to do a SkillBridge, they have to do the vetting through the DoD.
Okay, good to know.
One-to-one SkillBridges, they put a nix on that because some people were taking advantage.
Gotcha. Okay, that may not be true for Navy. I'm not sure. John.
May I add a quick something there, that if you do, as if you find your own company and you need a SkillBridge provider, Hiring Our Heroes can act as that go-between for you, so that if somebody isn't approved that way, then you can come through us and gain the back way.
Awesome, that's helpful. John, final closing comment from you, sir.
It was about the SkillBridge question. So my current company is DevOps Engineering, and we do have a large amount of DevOps SkillBridge positions that come available, and some of them even will work through the Hiring Our Heroes as well. So if that's something, you could connect with me if you wanted to talk about it more.
Awesome.
Typically once a year they'll post half a dozen of them, and sometimes even though there might be half a dozen, I've actually been on the hiring board where we had 6 openings and we still hired 8 because Hiring Our Heroes was able to work through like 2 additional, I don't know if they're called sponsorships. I'm not exactly sure the right verbiage for that, but I wanted to share that.
Yeah, that's fantastic, John. Thank you. So John and Jarvis connect, swap information. And then Eric added the Navy remains the same way, so you can do those one-to-ones. So with that, we are out of time, folks. But before we close out, I do want to thank Dave and Mike for spending their time to talk with us about Salesforce's military recruiting program, about military recruiting in general, and answering all of your excellent questions. So thank you both, gents. And thank you as well to all of you for spending your Wednesday with us in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. Please join us next week. We'll have another great co-host on. And have a safe week in the meantime. Appreciate it, everybody.